Got that coconut oil in there, all fatty, for that bulletproof coffee. I'm a big fan. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent. Still in transition, but at least I got my bed and my books. That's all I need. Hope you're all doing very well. Today is a very interesting book for your summer read. Fishboy is a short novel by Mark Richard, told like a Tom Waits song playing out of a shitty old radio, in a dive bar on a rotting dock near the frothing sea at 4 a.m. When it's storming outside and the men drinking claim they're ordering another drink to wait out the rain, when the truth is they're afraid to walk home in the darkness. It's a coming-of-age journey towards death, told in the nautical Southern Gothic style a la Joseph Conrad or maybe some of Hemingway, but with grisly, visceral descriptions of grit, decay, and derelict settings, in the Cormac McCarthyian fashion, laced with a nostalgic, good-natured humor, with demented sideshow characters, in scenarios of magical realism, and a generous dose of Flannery O'Connor. It's an outrageous tall tale of characters telling each other outrageous tall tales, in a seasick mythological phantasmagoria. It feels like walking through a haunted fish market with scales and hooks and metal and industrial slime everywhere. Dead eyes gazing at you with gutted stomachs. Slick industrial aprons and concrete stained with the insides of sea creatures. And of course the most appalling scent one can experience. Yet you can't stop reading because the writing is finely edited, with a mysterious tone from a strange creature who finds himself in an even stranger world. The full title is Fishboy, A Ghost's Story. And our pale, meek, waterlogged narrator, after being pushed into committing a murder in self-defense, seeks to become a ghost. You can't enter it with skepticism, right? From the very first page, you're either along for the ride or you're not. You'll know real quickly. The introduction is one of my favorites. Page 1. Also, this is my favorite book cover ever. I grew up in a house with this book on the shelves, and I just thought the ghostly blues and whites and the font and the spacing and all of this, the design, the photo, I just loved it so much, and I still do. I think it's just tremendously beautiful. Just sums up the ocean and all the darkness therein for me. And so, thanks, Mom. Page 1. All right. Highly recommend you get this one hardback. This is not a Kindle read, because it's like blue and black with the silver writing there. It's really beautiful actual book, and it's not expensive. Page 1. Fishboy. I began as a boy. As a human being boy. A boy who fled to sea. A boy with a whistling lisp and the silken-tipped fingers of another class. A boy with put-away memories of bedclothes bound tight about the head, knocked by a hammering fist, the smell of cigar and shoe leather, and the weighted burlap bag thrown from a car into a side-road swamp. A child born again there, slithering out of the sack, a new beginning into life, holding back water to breathe through sour, mudded filth and green surface slime. Put away memories of my gums pushed back and bloody gnawing slug root, the ripped frog muscle spasms tickling my tongue as I ate the things, almost whole. And then the all-night chorus of croaking reproach, the bitter-scented snake eggs I washed down with the stagnant sulfur water, a mushroom cap for a cup, all of it heaved back up, a slack-jawed torrent of spew splashing around my ankles, heaving up my own new creations of life in the mire, bits and pieces wiggling and squirming, convulsing, web-footed and scaled, tiny dead reptilian eyes like pretty black beads in pearl. Man, obviously disgusting, but you can't help but just, keep going. The cadence of it is stupendous. Word choice is immaculate. But it's not like a heavy intellectual read, This is fun. This is good writing. This is a good story. It's what I'm going for with this one. I used to live in Astoria, Oregon, where the Columbia River meets the mouth of the ocean, of the Pacific Ocean, and I used to walk along the soggy wooden pier at night, looking at the lights burning in the black water, and smelling the river that connects with the ocean underneath among the rocks. I used to watch the black and tungsten city through a rain-soaked windshield, cruising along the Megler Bridge, which connects to Washington State. I would watch Astoria, Oregon, as I'm coming from Washington into Oregon at night, and it was so beautiful. At night, it looked so much bigger and brighter than it actually was. It looked like it reminded me of like a European port city, like somewhere along the Mediterranean in France or something. Abandoned pilings and moss-infested rusted machinery and seaweed, and you hear the barking sea lions in the darkness, and you pass by these stinking metal fish factories, accosted by gangs of seagulls in the daytime. That was my home for several years, and part of me misses that. I don't miss the the sideways rain and the just extreme cold, and also the snow in the winters and all the emotional drainage that comes with that. But it's a great place to visit. And now, summer, if you're ever in that area, man, this is the best time to go. I grew up in a house with Fishboy by Mark Richard, an American author originally from Louisiana who was raised in rural Virginia. My mom loved it. My mom had great taste in books, Thompson, Hemingway, and then this was always on the shelf. Like I said, I thought it was one of the greatest covers I've ever seen. Still do. That's why I wanted to pick this up, because I never actually read it. And I always wondered, what was that book about? And it is completely absurd. Blew all sorts of expectations out of the water. It's actually hysterical, because thinking my mom actually loved this book, because my mom's not a normal mom, but she's the best mom. You know what I mean? My East Coast relatives were fishermen. One of them even worked in marine biology, which once led me to hugging a beluga whale and getting kissed on the cheek by a seal, which was a near traumatizing experience for a 4-year-old. This flopping seal coming up and going kissing you on the cheek. That's what seals sound like when they're, kissing. Very memorable is what I'm saying. It was totally awesome. And while I was never good at fishing, I always lived near the ocean. And now I live near the ocean again, and I'm thinking of taking it up. So if anybody wants to come and go deep water fishing with me down here, let me know. What I'm saying is that I have a connection with the book's environment. I've grown up near the ocean. I've grown up next to a lot of sea culture. Like I said, I knew it was some sort of ghost story, but when I bought it, I had no idea what I was in for. I was very pleasantly surprised. There's a great French film from the mid-90s called The City of Lost Children by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who is the director who's famous for Amélie, that adopts a very similar industrial, nautical aesthetic. The song Swampland by Nick Cave and the Birthday Party could easily have inspired entire chapters of this novel, or, maybe anything off of the first Bad Seeds album, Saint Huck, Huck Finn, Suttree by Cormac McCarthy, The River Water, just that's the world that this inhabits, right? You know where it's at if you've read that stuff. It's great. Our protagonist Fishboy is this small, strange, half-man creature, abandoned in the swamp as a child. He lives in this cartonated box in this grimy, seedy fish factory, hauling baskets of fish and bottom-dwelling shells, swimming under docks and grabbing sodas from the sunken machine that's fallen through the dock and is still plugged in, for this giant, creepy woman named Big Miss McGean, who seems to be, his southern overlord. So he's desperate to leave, and finally he gets his chance when this strange ship that really shouldn't come into port sidles up next to this place. And Big Miss McGean tries to eat Fishboy, and he's forced to kill her. He's forced to stab her. And he runs to the ship, and he hops aboard, stowaway. And he meets this whole host of characters on the ship, this whole host of unsavory characters. And there's a pretty strong argument for saying his situation just goes from bad to worse. But certainly more interesting, which is good for us. First, there's John, who's this enormous, grizzled, walking cartographic giant with nautical maps tattooed all over his scar-ridden body, which the rest of the crew read to know where they're going. Mangled and bitten by all the sharks he's chased and split open, forever searching for the one that ate his long-lost mermaid lover. There's Lonnie, who's this absolute and total murderous psychopath, a man who passionately hates cooks because they can never find a good one for the ship. Fishboy's introduction to Lonnie involves him splitting the last ship's cook down the middle in two with an axe. And this is where the gallows humor comes into play, because Fishboy hears the last words of the cook. The cook said he was sorry to Lonnie, sorry to cook his eggs so greasy, sorry to salt the coffee, sorry to make stew from boiling his apron, sorry to blow snot into the beans, sorry that he was the cook at all, saying he had always wanted to be a blacksmith, but that he was frightened of horses. And Lonnie said that it was all right. The cook shuddered, and I pressed the oyster sack against him to keep his inside things from sliding out. We have no idea how he's still alive doing this. This is where the, absurdity comes in. The cook felt my pressure and looked down at me. "Never learn to cook," the cook said to me, and I shook my head that I never would. Then there's the nocturnal Mr. Watt, who hides inside the ship and who was born inside out with his muscles and sinew showing everywhere. He's nocturnal. He can't can't come out in the daytime. He gets burnt up by the sun. There's Ira Dench, this paranoid man who sees Fishboy as the ultimate symbol of bad luck, as someone who will bring a rogue wave upon them. So he lashes himself to the top of the ship so as not to be swept away when this rogue wave comes, and he just occasionally shouts, "Rogue wave!" at them for the rest of the book. And then there's a simpleton who brays like a donkey and generally screws up everything, whom they politely refer to simply as the idiot. And the last character I'll mention, which of course is my favorite, is the weeping man who says fuck. Take a guess what he does. A band of outsiders, all of them with histories better left untold, though told anyways. Weathering the elements on a path whose end almost certainly involves a very painful death. Few things make sense in Fishboy. Sense is not what Mark Richards seeks. The style and language of the writing is the reason to read Fishboy. The bizarre pleasure of submerging yourself in swampy, briny, sensorial descriptions of men who seem more ghost than human, inhabiting this sailing, sunken ship with a perfect old-fashioned gallows humor. It's damn funny. It's really funny. Like when they're paying their respects at some semblance of a funeral for that cook that Lonnie just axed in half. "So, God," said John, "I guess the cook is no longer liable in the death of that woman and that woman's prize pig on that island we anchored off of last trip. Him going ashore to scrounge victuals, us too weak from scurvy and hunger to lift an oar into an oarlock. And then on the evening breeze we smelled roasted pork and he returned greasy-fingered and fat with a woman's rhinestone hairclip on his belt, us having to painfully haul in the anchor when the natives came out in their painted war canoes. We even tolerated him when he told us they had chased him away from the fire before he could grab the pig. But later we saw the pork worms in his stool, the bastard. Oh, the lucky, lucky bastard. You see, Lord, there is no meanness in how I just settle the folds in the funeral shroud with my foot here, and here, and here, and step away, Lonnie. I didn't mean to set a bad example. That's enough kicking. Leave off from the kicking the carcass, I said. So God, take this very, very lucky bastard from us and back into your employ to serve up boot biscuits and snot rag stew to your legion of angels who always fail us, those bright-eyed Nancys with mighty swords and lacy pants. And one last thing," said John quietly. "Help me keep my foot on the necks of these your serpents' servants. And let me finally net my loved one. And send us soon another cook real soon," added Lonnie. "Amen," said John, and we buried the cook in the mud of the creek at the mark of its lowest tide. Man, that great sentence, kind of just like a nice song, just rolled off there. So as we go through the journey, each man relates his past. Each successive tale increasingly morbid and violent and outrageous. Like a group of crusty sailors singing murder ballads. All the men on board seem to have set out to hide, or die, or both. Including Fishboy, who hallucinates along the way out of guilt or whatever, thinking he's been caught again by Big Miss McGean, whom again he stabbed before hopping the ship. It's not really a spoiler. There's plenty I'm not telling you, and I encourage you to get it immediately. This is for sale via me, by the way. Hit me up if you're interested in contributing to the show by purchasing this book. Still going to get that shop up. So many things I'm going to do with the channel, but I mean, you can see things are in a little bit of transition. One more move. Wish me luck. The power of Fishboy lies in its ability to recognize the innocence and goodness of men convincingly, who are immersed in the darkest worlds you can imagine. We see this world through the lopsided, opposite-facing eyes of Fishboy, who seeks to and finally becomes a ghost. And so I'll read you the ending, which reminds me very much of the song Ninth and Hennepin by Tom Waits. Song or poem. It's more like spoken word, with some eerie noises. I am sometimes in the dune lines, and in the afternoons I am deep within the woods. I know the place where a cap with a sheriff's pin floats atop a quicksand pool, the idiot chased there by men with bull-whipped dogs, betrayed by the fish-house women who said a large man they had seen before had come ashore dressed in mule skin. At dusk I wander the side roads so that by evening you can find me at the edge of the soft-skulled encampment. I am the watching face that flickers just beyond the firelight. I come to study the child as he sips his finished fish soup. I listen for the fear in his voice as he calls out to me, "Who's there?" I watch him reach for the shovel of fire that brightens me away. I mist inside your house. I linger in your curtains. I wait until you are asleep so that I can speak to you in your dreams. I am as close to you as the veins in your neck when I say to you, in my whispering lisp, I too began as a boy. Oh, I got some goosebumps there. Got some goosebumps. If you like any of the Hemingway, or you liked that, that book about the crazy guy in Key West, or, any of this stuff, any of this nautical, gothic fiction, I'm all about it. I'm reading a little bit of easier material right now, because I have very limited time and I'm trying to put out as much as possible. But, I wanted to throw this your way before I forgot about it, because this is classic. It's a fast read. I recommend it for the beach or just your travels. If you're going on a trip this summer, it's perfect. I highly recommend it, especially if you're going down south or somewhere near the water, right? Or maybe Astoria, Oregon, to walk around at night. I could give you some recommendations if you're going up there. There's an old shipwreck up there in Cannon Beach. I forget the name of it. That's a great place, though. Yeah, of all the places I grew up, Astoria sticks with me the most. If you'd like to help support the show, you can head on over to patreon.com/books-are-better-than-food. You can help me get a cup of bulletproof coffee, which gets me going in the morning. Really appreciate it. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook. Facebook like would be really appreciated. That's the one I'm kind of like trying to raise right now, so if it's not too inconvenient, you don't even have to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can just open a tab and click like on the Facebook. Would really appreciate it. Thank you. But please subscribe, because there's a lot of great stuff coming up that you do not want to miss. So, always remember, life is far too short to read bullshit. Stay sharp, stay well read, take care. Good to see you. Have a great night. Ciao.